Hello, everyone, and welcome. You're listening to the 888 Align podcast. I'm your host, Jessica Hanna. I'm a serial entrepreneur who likes to immerse into many facets of life, focusing on growth, mindset, healing, and soul alignment. 8 represents strength, prosperity, balance, power, overcoming, stability, and to me, the yin and yang of life. Pain weaves the gratitude for the beauty in life and appreciation for our generational evolution. You're in the right place if you're looking to dive deeper into finding meaning within yourself and your life experiences, work towards transforming into and aligning with your highest version of yourself, take action steps towards building and creating the life of your dreams, as well as explore discussions on health and wellness, balance, self-care, plus areas like travel, fashion, art, culture, manifestation, entrepreneurship, and even a little spirituality. To be 888 aligned means to be aligning to your strongest and most powerful and enlightened version of yourself. To continue to evolve and always be open to growth while staying true to your core values and individuality. Let's get started with this week's alignment. Hello, everyone, and good morning. Welcome back to 888 Aligned. Thank you for taking the time to check out the podcast and tune in as always. I know it's been a while since my last episode. I have had a bunch of things come up into the new year that all came at once, but I'm back and happy to be recording again. I hope you got to catch up on some of my past episodes while I was gone. And if you didn't, you can always listen in to any episode at any point. They are really evergreen, so go check out one that you feel is calling you. I hope your new year has started off well, and if it hasn't, there is still so much time to turn it around. Don't be deterred by a harsh start. We often get so caught up in what is happening right in front of us that we forget sometimes to zoom out and get some perspective on the entirety of it all. It's really one of my favorite things to do, actually, when I get in my head too much. I picture myself zooming out from where I am in the exact moment and keep zooming out of, let's say, I'm in my house, then out of my house into my town, then the state, the country, the earth, now I'm in space. But in all seriousness, when you also zoom out in a different way, like, okay, we are in February. It's technically only the second month into the new year. I have 10 more months in this year alone. You just got to give yourself some perspective. It's my favorite pastime for getting myself out of a funk. If your year is going well so far, this is also a great technique to check yourself and keep yourself consistent on where you want to take things. Today, I wanted to talk about the whole idea of saving it for later. So what do I mean by that? This is the whole concept we often get into our heads about when we start saving the special things or the big things or even our dream plans for later. This whole I'm saving it for when I get to do this, or I'm going to start working on that dream idea when I get to this point in my life, or I'm waiting for this X accomplishment to happen before I get to do this and treat myself to this. Who is setting these rules? Why do we even have them? And what would your life look like if you threw all of those rules into the fire? So with that, let's get into today's episode. Okay, so I'm sure you have at some point said to yourself, I'm not going to reward myself with X until I get to Y point in my life, or I'm not going to do this action until I've accomplished this. So let's get into some easy and simple examples. We may say, I'm not going to wear these expensive or nice clothes until I have a special occasion to wear them out. I'm not going to do my makeup and hair nice unless I have a night out planned. They can be basic like that. Maybe it gets a little deeper, like, I'm not going to cook myself a nice meal unless I'm having company. I'll just heat something up from the freezer or order in. Or, I'm not going to drink this nice bottle of champagne or wine unless I have people over to enjoy it with. I'll just go with the cheap stuff. I'm not going to clean my home unless I'm expecting people over. Maybe that one is a little different for some, but you'll see why I'm getting into it here. What about even deeper? I'm not going to get married or have kids until I reach this massive career goal or financial benchmark. And maybe you have a good reason to do this for sure. This is going to be a different perspective for everyone. Let's go even deeper. I'm not going to do the things I really want to do in life until I reach this point in my career, finances, or life milestone. I'm not going to move to the place, city, state I've always dreamed of living until I accomplish this. I'm not going to travel and take myself on this amazing vacation and visit this place I've dreamed of visiting my entire life until I retire. I'm not going to make time for things I love to do or enjoy until I reach this goal in life. Do you see where I'm going here? The whole saving it for later becomes our way of life. We save it for later and later and later until later becomes never. And before you know it, life is at its end. And yeah, maybe that's a little dark, but we're all about getting some perspective here, right? Now, it goes without saying, sometimes we have to put ourselves behind something else. Sometimes we do have to wait a little bit on a timeline we are on. It doesn't mean you have to have a hard line on where and when you can start living life for yourself and being a little selfish, even if it's just a little bit each day or each week or even once a month. There are the gray areas of how you can introduce the things you enjoy, love, and wish into your life right now. Just because we have financial obligations, family obligations, career obligations, etc., does not mean we cannot start working on the things we love and the things that make us feel good in our everyday lives. So stop saving it for later. Welcome it into your life today. Wear the nice outfit you bought for that special occasion out on your day of errands because it makes you feel good to get into some beautiful clothes. Do your makeup and hair just because it makes you feel good to pamper yourself even if you stay home. It's for you. Cook yourself the nice meals each week. Even if you don't have the time, do a once a week nice meal for yourself or something like that to put the effort into yourself. I used to do this thing where I'd only put effort into cooking nice meals for my family, but if I was just making it for myself, I wouldn't put the same effort in, or I'd even eat less healthy and maybe just some junk food because I was being lazy, not because I wanted the junk food. And that's the difference. It was the laziness that I realized took precedence when it came to myself. But when it came to everyone else, I pushed myself to make sure they got the best of me, the best of my clothes, hair, makeup, food I cooked, whatever I had to offer, my actions toward them, my mental and emotional capacity for them. How come I didn't do any of that for myself? Because we often think if it's just for ourselves, we don't need to put in that much effort. And hey, look, I'm all for the days you want to just be a blob on the couch and relax and do nothing in comfy clothes, order in, no effort at all. That's not the point I'm trying to make here. It's about our daily habits towards ourselves, as well as what we hold away from ourselves dangling in front of us, that until we reach a certain goal, we are then rewarded, or until we are around people we want to impress by our efforts that we put the effort in or into ourselves. That's just simply not good enough. What about you? This goes in line with having strong boundaries. Boundaries for other people in our lives, as well as the boundaries we set to protect ourselves from falling into a place we don't want to be that actually ends up hurting. Hurting ourselves, hurting our situations, whether that be career, financial, relationship, how we feel emotionally. When it comes to people, how much are you willing to give before your giving hits a boundary wall that is protecting yourself from a massive burnout and social battery at zero? Set where that boundary is and make sure you follow it out of respect for yourself. If you are a people pleaser or empath, you may struggle with this one a lot. I know I have, and I've had to figure out when to stop myself from helping others because I was hurting myself, when to bow out for the night because I was physically, mentally, or emotionally drained, when to put an end to a conversation because I used to care more about having a resolution and making the other person feel better than my own mental health and feeling okay. What are your boundaries of respect for yourself? How you allow people to treat you, whether that be friends, family, or significant others. This is all about raising your standards for yourself, which ties into not saving it for later. Start it now. How can you figure all this out? Well, think about how far you may have been pushed sometimes that crosses a line that hurts you. Maybe you have a significant other that truthfully doesn't treat you the way you want to be treated, doesn't make you feel the way you want to feel in a relationship, doesn't provide the experience you desire. Who is really letting that happen? You are the one experiencing this, right? So how do you stop it? Put a hard line on what you accept and what you don't. Don't give in to the experiences that make you feel like shit because you are used to a habit, a cycle, or being in that relationship. The same goes for a friendship, right? Sometimes we keep friends around because they have been in our lives for a long time or through hard times or have significance to us, but we are unhappy. We aren't treated well. Communication doesn't work, and yet we stay in this friendship because we find it more challenging to change it or end it than to stay in it. At least that's the thought. Let me tell you, staying in things for the long term that are damaging to you is abusive to yourself. It may be easy in the moment of your cycle where you get past the bad moment, where you hit a high again to convince yourself it's not that bad. But what I want you to do is zoom out, do that zoom out perspective thing I was talking about earlier in the episode. Specifically, whether it be on that relationship, maybe on your career, on your living situation, whatever it is we're talking about, and see how many cycles you've lived through and what is tolerable and what is too much. What if it were someone else going through it? How would you see it then? What if it was someone you cared about? What would be your advice to them in your situation? Don't save it for later. Do it now. Okay, and what about the boundaries we set to protect ourselves in general to make sure we sustain a happy and healthy place for ourselves? First, let's look at simple examples almost everyone can relate to. How much time do you spend on your phone and on social media? If you have the luxury of having these things, you also know how abusive they become to our well-being. We spend so much time in this digital made-up world. We are literally out here with our faces more in our phones than in the real world. If you want to feel happier, I want you to actually observe yourself and see what cycles of time you spend on your phone, on social that are not for work and just for scrolling. How much of your life goes to this? We have lost so much time scrolling and keeping our minds inundated with one thing after another on what we come across and the people we're following, that we are not only shortening our attention span, so it's harder to just sit still or just read a book, but we are also taking away precious time we could be spending on ourselves. Think about all the time you spend scrolling on social media that could be spent being present with yourself, spending time on you. What could you do with your life and with yourself if social media didn't exist? How much time would you actually have to do things or just live in the moment and enjoy the time you have? Spend time with family or friends or go physically do things. What if you took all the time you spent on social media and instead poured it into a passion project, a hobby you love, a dream you've been waiting to start? And replace social media with anything that maybe takes up a lot of time in your life that actually is painful or causes you hardships and is something you could change. And there's things, of course, that sometimes we have to deal with temporarily because we just can't change them and they're part of life, of course. But there are other things we do have control over that we can change that maybe we're just afraid to change or we're too uncomfortable to change or we're comfortable in the discomfort. We often don't think we have time. I'm telling you most of the time, and of course there are exceptions, but more often than not, we actually do have the time. We just find ways to fill it with things we are unconscious to because they are patterns of ours that we either don't want to get out of, don't feel ready to get out of, or are just completely unconscious to them. We all have a timeline. I know that me telling you all of this in this episode may not suddenly make you change a thing. I already know that. The same way someone who is addicted to something is not going to change it and break the addiction until they are ready. We have to be ready on our own. You can't force anything on anyone. A lot of times we are addicted to our lifestyles and the cycles because they are comfortable. We know them well. We know how they start and how they end. They are predictable. And sometimes even though they may not be the best options, they feel safe because we know the ending. That's like that saying, the devil you know is better than the devil you don't, right? Meaning what you're comfortable with and what you're used to is better than dealing with something that might be new and different that you don't know. It could be worse or it could be better, right? But we just often deal with and succumb to what we're used to, even if it doesn't make us feel good, even if it does cause pain and hardship within our life. That's the hard part about change in life. Until you get used to doing new things constantly, letting your body learn how to get excited rather than nervous and in panic, and feel at peace with new things coming in while old things exit, which is something that takes some practice. Feeling at peace with the cycles of life change things, the cycles of the fact that not everything lasts forever and that we have to enjoy them while we have them and accept when they leave. Until you get to that point, you'll probably stay in these same cycles. But if listening to this sparks some new thought in your head, maybe catches you at the right time when you're looking for change, or is something you listen to once now and then again a year from now when you're actually ready, then I know that this episode brought some sort of value to you, and that's all I really need. Now, I said in the beginning of the episode, who is setting these rules? Why do we have them? And what would life look like if we just threw them all out? That's for you to ask yourself. All of these predetermined notions about our timeline and how life has to go is all made up completely. It's our perspective and perception on life. It's a mirror we are looking at and a projection we thought we had to meet, whether it be how we grew up, what our parents told us, what our community taught us, school, whatever it was. These are all made up, right? This is just made up in society. It doesn't have to be that way at all. And I heard this creator, and his handle is @Robbie'sMoonMusic, put this whole timeline thing in a really nice analogy, and I wanted to share it. He called it the marathon of life analogy. And I'm going to paraphrase it from his video, but you could go check it out, and it's nicely done. When we look at life as a race, which we often do, we are usually racing against the time clock of our life. And as he describes it, we are literally racing to die, right? At the end. So we are born and we die, and there's all this stuff that happens in between. And in a way, it's true. We are so focused on what we can achieve next and next and next before we die, before we age, before we feel like we can't anymore. And he goes on to explain how there are 4 people in that race with you. The people ahead of you, the people racing alongside you, the people behind you, and the people on the sidelines. And the sidelines can be people who are either supporting you and maybe are way ahead in life, like your elders, parents, grandparents, or the people on the sidelines might be haters, projectors, people who are booing you and don't want to see you succeed, and so on. And when you run a race, your eyes are focused on what is in front of you, right? When you're running an actual race. So that means, where are you focused? You're focused on the people ahead of you. Maybe they just hit a career milestone you've been working toward. Maybe they are appearing more successful than you. Maybe they just got married, bought a house, had a kid, any of that. The people who are ahead of you in life aren't spending time looking at you. But what are they doing? They're looking at the people ahead of them, or looking at that finish line, as he puts it, which is really death. Which, yes, brutal, but hello, let's all wake up and really think about this. Yes, we are all here for a short time. No, our timelines are never going to be the same or look the same, and we shouldn't all want the same things either. It wouldn't make sense because we are so different, all of us. And the people next to you are not really paying much attention to you. They might see you as a little bit of competition, but, they're just kind of there trying to keep at your pace. And the people that are looking at you are the people on the sidelines and the people behind you, right? The sideline people are either cheering you on or judging you, and who cares if they're judging you? They're on the sidelines, right? The people behind you, now they are looking to you to try to catch up to you. And if you look back at them, and in his words, you're going to trip and they're going to pass your ass, technically, you also remember what it may have been like to be in their position. So why would you judge them? And there's that saying, people that are more successful than you don't turn around and judge you. They're just often there to help. And if they are judging you, they have their own problems to work out. But remember, the people ahead of you are doing the same things the people behind you are doing, and you are doing to the people ahead, thinking, I should be there, I should have that, I haven't accomplished this yet. So what does this all mean? The judgment is all a perception and a projection. Everyone is looking at what is ahead. And when you get to that finish line, you'll realize it's not really a race. We're all just running full speed to death one day. So stop running. Maybe take a little walk. Look around and enjoy more. Take your time. Do the things you want to do. Stop saving it for later. Throw your rules away and try something different. And I'm telling you, if you start getting used to doing new things, taking risks, taking big leaps, or just changing up your routine in a way that feels uncomfy to you, but is good for you, things will absolutely 100% get better for you. We have to allow for the things that are no longer good for us to get out of our lives in order for the good to come in, which means we need to release them. We need to let them go. We need to be willing and ready to move forward and move on. The next time you feel nervous or panicky about something you're trying to change that you know is good for you, try to trick your brain into thinking you're excited instead of being nervous. And being nervous and excited can mimic the same types of feelings in the body. Start focusing on the excitement. Tell yourself, no, I'm actually really excited about this. Just even speak it out loud and start convincing your brain that you feel excited when you know this is good for you. Start living life for you. Do not save it for later. Do it now. Don't be lazy when it comes to what is good for you if you know that in the end, you win and you are better for it. Don't wait on your dreams of yours because you had the idea that you couldn't start it until a certain point. Don't save the fancy clothes or the pampering for a special occasion. When you start living life this way, you'll start seeing exactly what I'm talking about. And lastly, if we think about all of this in a frequency way, what we attract in our life, what frequency we align with, is not going to be the frequency we outwardly try to convince people we are. It is our inward frequency that emits outward, that what we can manifest, attract, and align with will ultimately match up with our efforts we put into ourselves when no one is looking but us. All right, thanks for listening in to episode 15 and getting into that 888 alignment. Stay tuned for the next episode. I'll chat with you guys next time. Thank you for listening into the 888 Align podcast. Please make sure to rate, review, and subscribe. I would really appreciate that to help the growth of the podcast. If you want to check out more and join the 888 Align community, you can give the podcast a follow on all social platforms at 888 Aligned Podcast.